Wildlife can cause major headaches for homeowners. From pesky rodents to curious raccoons, these uninvited visitors can bring unwanted mess, damage, and also danger into our homes. Here to tell us about how to tackle this problem is Dauphin Ewart with the Bug Master. Dauphin, good morning.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you here. We're talking, of course, about wildlife today. Let's talk about the types of wildlife that commonly tend to invade homes.
The most common thing we deal with that I think people would expect is rats and mice. Those are super common around Central Texas. We also see a ton of activity from larger wildlife like raccoons. Another one that can get into houses a lot that people might not think of is squirrels. And then there's a lot of other wildlife that gets into houses around Central Texas. Things like possums, armadillos are one that we see a lot in yards. And then there's some less common ones that are a little bit weird. Skunks are one that we'll see. We've dealt with some foxes. There's a lot of really cool wildlife out there. We just don't want it in our houses.
So actually, that's my next question for you. How do these things typically get into our homes?
Yeah, it's a great question, and honestly, it depends on the animal. And it's surprising to people how small of an opening a lot of these animals need. Mice will say if you have a hole about the size of your pinky, that's how big the hole needs to be for a mouse to get in the house. On a rat, a hole about the size of your thumb they can get into. So it's kind of shocking how small the openings are. Animals like squirrels and raccoons will actually do additional damage to open up holes in spaces where the hole wasn't big enough to begin with. And there's a lot of normal places that your house is going to have unexpected openings. We'll call them roof intersections, but there's places where your roof lines come together. And usually just during construction, there's small openings that exist there that you wouldn't notice. They're not part of flawed construction per se. They're just really small openings that allow animals to get in. And with those sizes, there's so many tiny areas, under siding, there's openings under doors. Again, you don't need very much space. So there's just a lot of really, really tiny openings that animals can get into.
Once they're in, we may not always recognize an obvious sign that they're present. In fact, sometimes they can be surprising, let's call them symptoms of having unwanted guests.
The number one sign that people will notice is probably either gnawed on food materials. Some common places where I would look, pet food is a really common one. Just throughout the pantry, boxes will end up with little gnawed edges and things like that. Another thing that you might see in corners of cabinets or in other, corner areas, you might see droppings. It's just gonna look like a small little black pellet. And those can be signs of that activity as well.
Something really surprising is you said you can actually link house fires sometimes to activity.
So from time to time, rodents will do things like gnaw on wires, and anytime that happens, that can be a fire exposure, and it's one of the causes that gets noted for house fires is rodents.
Let's talk about how we can prevent them from ever getting in.
So one of the best things to do around a residential home is really just to keep down clutter and foliage. Keeping a lawn mowed, keeping clutter away, it reduces the number of harborage areas where the rodents will go to feel safe. Another thing to pay a lot of attention to is pet food and water. If you're leaving pet food out, that food is great food for rats and it's gonna attract them in. So anything that we do that kind of tells rats this is a great place to come hang out, we'll draw them in closer. And then the next thing is paying attention to some of those common areas. Normally those wouldn't be things that would be super easy for a homeowner to know. Any good pest professional would be able to take a look at a property and look at some of the most common areas that would be vulnerability points, and we'd be able to seal those up. A lot of people will call that excluding those areas.
So what can we do once we've got them to get rid of them?
The very first thing to do, honestly, is to talk to somebody. Figuring out what wildlife you have is the most important first step in figuring out how to solve the problem. There's a variety of methods that you might use depending on what you have. The best thing to do there is to have somebody come take a look and see what the activity is that you're seeing so that they can actually verify what you're seeing so that you can get a plan together to solve that problem.
So let's talk real quickly about the services you provide. They're both residential and commercial. You tend to see different problems in different areas, but you've got a lot to offer.
We started as a pest control company, and over the years we've grown to expand our wildlife services just because our customers needed us to, frankly. It's one of the common pest challenges that people have. So obviously we do all the standard pest control that you would expect, the roaches and ants. We also handle the full range of wildlife, so rats, mice. For businesses, we'll even handle things like bats or something that some businesses will have challenges with. For some businesses, they'll want netting up so that birds don't roost in entryways and things like that. So it really is a really huge variety of types of services.
A range of services and very good education along the way. Dauphin, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Let the Bug Master deal with pests and wildlife so you don't have to. Learn more about all of the services the Bug Master provides at thebugmaster.com. This segment is sponsored by the Bug Master.